Hello again, I'm Dataman, the artist sourceman, and I'm here today, recovering from a horrible throat ache, to talk about BASTARD! BASTARD! It's 1992 to 1993 short action comedy fantasy based on still ongoing manga of the same name. This is a case where I can't decide if the series is bad or worse. The idea is this. A bad guy with 3 colors wants to revive the god of destruction in a post-apocalyptic fantasy world. To stop that, an anti-hero is summoned and the rest is pretty much fighting with no decisive ending. The characters are very simplistic. The main character is Dark Snyder, an immortal hedonist with large drives for both sex and violence. He looks like the demon-possessed version of Yusuke from Yu Yu Hakusho, which isn't coincidence judging by the lack of imagination present here. Then there's 2 side women. One is an awful failure of a tsundere and mostly works as a foil to the serious moments and the actual comedy. The other one's a submissive princess I seriously prefer. Dark Snyder is built up to be this epic womanizer, but she's basically the only one he dominates. Then there's guts-looking ninja master Gaara, who also shares some personality points with him. Again, not probably a coincidence. There's also an explosive mage. I wish. Then, a lightning-using dark elf. Did I forget anyone? Oh, the villains. Well, they do pretty much nothing, so please excuse me. From here, I'll get to the aforementioned sex and violence, as they are the main draws to seeing this. The fanservice is really timid, surprisingly. There's a point where one character says that Dark Snyder has had 200 to 300 women in his life of 400 years. Let's say that it's 300, to be generous. However, we know that he once had only one lover for about 200 years, so what gives? After my calculations, I have figured out that Dark Snyder's wild escapades were apparently about 1 woman per year or less. Not exactly Rand's levels of prowess, isn't it? I checked the stats and it appears that some people in Hollywood have had more in an average human life. Also, the series shows a decent passage of time over which he never makes babies with any of the women who annoyingly follow him around. The first episode he does make some threat but never follows up on them. Mostly the fanservice in this show overall is derived from informed attributes. What happens on the screen is mostly very reserved. That's very surprising considering that movie begins with a bunch of rape and murder followed by chicks stripping. I hate it when fanservice stop everything a grinding halt and I have to just sit there waiting for it to be over. But seriously, there could have been more here. Why not? Dark Snyder is summoned by a virgin's first kiss, even though it's made into just a virgin's kiss with no explanation later. That makes it even weirder how he doesn't just force himself on every nearby virgin to make getting him away impossible. It seems like he has the symptoms of Caboture's disease. The fanservice outside of the boring panty shots is mostly uncomfortable, handled with straight out hentai logic. There's only a couple short scenes of partial nudity and most of them include an ugly, old, virgin fetish having rapist vampire. I was greatly offended by the realization that I'm 2/5 this character. This girl's really hot, basically the most sexy thing about this whole show. Too bad we move straight to Dark Snyder's adopted daughter who was also his lover for a century. That's not horrifying. The last bit of fanservice in this show is a bunch of molesting tentacles, but the possibility of Armageddon is really diminishing my boner. Basically, the sexual elements are very misguided and not alluring at all. Still, you could probably make a drinking game out of counting the panty shots. Whatever, let's just count them now. Whoa! I've seen actual hentai with less of these. I know because I counted. What about the violence then? Well, there's some decently good fighting, one gory punch, one full-on halving, a couple disarmings, and a scene where a blood-crying guy pulls off his own heart.
今自由にしてやるからな。
However, they are all very brief and barely any reason to watch this damn show. The last thing worth discussing is the comedy percent. It's like this show is actively taunting me with everything it does. Many names are from metal bands, like Metallicana is Metallica, The Last Guardian City is Iron Maiden, which comes from Iron Maiden, and the Dark Snyder's final move is Megadeth, which obviously comes from Megadeth. Now, I'm not a huge metalhead, so there's obviously many more. Outside of that, the comedy is mostly standard anime comedy, but there's also some fourth wall breaking. It fails because it's effectively a spoiler. Also, there's a bizarre scene of Dark Snyder loaning 500 yen to the main chick. Long time after, he returns it in a tearful scene. So, what's the problem? He doesn't use it for anything. The scene was included just to include this one specifically say. Parody? Most probably. So, what do I think ultimately? BASTARD! It's a 3 out of 10 anime that makes a lot of mean-spirited quips and insults towards 2 out of 10 anime. It's quite pathetic and only worth a watch for the fans of trashy anime who have seen about everything else. And maybe metal fans who are stoned. See you next time.